Hey everybody, welcome to Workforce Gaming. I am Brad, here with Doug.
Hey.
Resident Evil 4 Remake is out. This, in my mind, is on par with Final Fantasy VII Remake in terms of like my anticipation for it, my wanting this thing. Like,
Okay.
Resident Evil 4 is one of those games in my brain that I would consider to be easily in my top 10 games of all time.
No, definitely not. It's weird because I definitely played in the same time period because I played the PS2 release of it, which was like the year after it came out. And I remember like thinking it was pretty good. But I don't remember like loving it or thinking it's like, holy, I actually know what I remember. I remember it being the controls being weird because this was the first time they'd done the over the shoulder thing.
Yeah.
And I think at the time it was more like, this is more weird than it is a good thing. And this is back when I was like, when you're a kid, like there's like certain games you want to play and like anything experimental is not good.
No.
I feel like it's totally opposite of that now. I was actually more excited of this game, not as a remake of Resident Evil 4, but as the follow up to the Resident Evil 2 remake, which I really, really love. I really love that game. So that's kind of not that I'm not familiar, but I'm coming more from the Resident Evil 2 remake fan, excited for the remake rather than Resident Evil 4.
I guess to get into this, I think you did bring up a big point that this game was like revolutionary at the time.
Yeah.
And I think that again holds a place for me as why this is one of the greatest games ever. So I did I did replay this about a year and a half ago, but this very much ground up. I will say I didn't notice much difference. I know there is stuff in there.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I played it on, I think it was I don't even remember which version it was. I played it on my PS4, so I don't remember whatever version that is. But just having played it 2 or 3 years ago, I remembered everything. Everything seemed right. It was like, maybe I used to take a left turn there instead of a right. And I kind of tried to look into it, and it seemed like it was lots of that stuff in terms of differences, which was just, you took a left instead of a right.
That's funny. I mean, mine, like, I just had like vague memories of it, so it's just kind of like it. I think it's interesting because it's like it's one of those like remakes that holds so close to the original that and that's like a double-edged sword for sure.
Yeah,
because like RE2 I think was like I like RE2 because I had played the original Resident Evil like 2 and more like Dino Crisis, but I've played those types of games. Like I liked how that just felt like a completely fresh perspective on it. It was a take.
Yep.
I think is the best way to put it. And then this one just felt like it's not it's less straightforward than some straightforward remakes I've played, but it's like less of a take. I think there was just less to say with Resident Evil 4. Like by remaking it, I think you're introducing it to a new audience. I just think that game pretty much said what it needed to, and there wasn't really much to, like, you're adding an extra 5% on rather than like, Final Fantasy VII remake or Resident Evil 2 remake where you're like, let's completely just look at this from a totally different angle. It's like, let's add Dead Space controls. It's like, okay. And make it look really, really nice. Yeah.
And I think that's where I kind of came at this from is my takeaway at the end was not, oh my God, this is the greatest remake ever. Oh my God, this game is amazing. It was more of a confirming my thoughts that Resident Evil 4 is a great game.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what this one did different, but it is still one of my favorite games ever. I still absolutely love everything about this. I think I could have gotten away with just playing the original one still and been okay. I think you're right that this one definitely doesn't feel as needed, and I think that might just be a case of Resident Evil 4 is one of those games that has been on every system since the GameCube. Sure. So it's just like, it seems like it's like the game that never goes away. So I feel like it never had like that yearning for it like you get with the Resident Evil 2, you get with the Final Fantasy VII, you get with some of these other games where you're like, oh man, they're going back 30 years. So it's like, that VR version of this came out about 9 months ago.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure there was a PS4 re-release. Yeah. There was on the Wii. Like, so it's one of those games that's kind of, I think, always been here. And I think that's why it doesn't quite have the impact in terms of like, whoa, Resident Evil 4, just because we've seen it so frequently. That being said, just to get into it a little bit more, like, the game plays amazing. It feels so good. One of my kind of hiccups in a lot of survival horror games, and this one starts to tip the needle pretty far away from survival horror into action. This is kind of that turning point where I think they saw so much success with 4. They're like, people like the action in that, let's go hard into it. Here's Resident Evil 5 and 6. But I actually like that a lot. I think one of the things that I really love about this is I always had that fear kind of in me of, ooh, what scary thing is going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
And that fear of running out of ammo without it ever being an actual issue, which I think is a perfectly balanced thing in this, because I don't think there was ever once where I ran out of ammo. There were a couple times where I was like, ooh, I only got a couple bullets, and then you run into a room with the merchant and you buy some gunpowder, there's just bullets lying around and you're good to go.
That was actually, it's funny you say that, because I think it is interesting, because it definitely creates this tension, because I think the other thing, besides them messing with the ammo count, I think they're messing with the number of enemies that they send to you, and they're also messing with the health of certain enemies, because some enemies will go down like 2 shots, and then the same looking guy will go down like 5 or 6, and there's no real difference. It's like, I'm shooting this guy basically the same as I shot that other guy.
But that guy had a crossbow and this guy had a pitchfork. I think that's the thing, though. It's like a lot of like that type of stuff, is it's the enemy type in terms of weaponry that they're coming at you with that seems to adjust it.
Maybe, but I think they're also playing. It feels like this game has created the perfect sort of fake, the perfect sort of illusion of no safety net, of like what you're saying, of like,
yes,
it will like make you just run out of ammo, and then I'll give you tons of ammo. Or it's like, I'll just get you low on this and then give you tons of this. But it feels like that's happening so often. And I think, again, I don't think it's just the ammo count. I think it's actually the types of enemies they send at you, because each enemy has let's just say an unknown percentage of turning into a super enemy, which takes 2 or 3 times as many shots. And I noticed when I had more ammo, more of those guys would show up. And then when I had less ammo, less of those guys shut up. And I don't think it was, and I don't think it was because that particular scene says X many zombies are. I think they're actually taking into account your ammo. So it's something that it's funny. It's like, is this an issue or not? Because it creates tension, but it felt a little bit like, do I even matter? Because I will always be okay. It's kind of like, it's some of those. It's because it's one of the I mean, I did die a lot. Also,
I was going to say, you complained about this being hard, and now you're going like, but they made it so I feel safe all the time. But you complained to me several times about how hard this game was for you.
It is hard. So like, I'm definitely going back and forth. But it's kind of the issue I had with Metal Gear Solid 5, where like, does any decision matter if all of them work? And it's kind of like in this, does any of my survival horror decision matter if I know I'm actually going to be safe at the end of the day? And that's kind of the tension I've had, like, even ever since the Resident Evil 2 remake, because that also played in that a lot of like whether or not to revive a zombie seemed to be entirely related to whether or not you had ammo. And that's where I'm kind of like with this game. Like, I really enjoyed playing. I really like that bit. And that was like just in the back of my head and just like kind of like infected my whole playthrough. While I was enjoying, I was just wondering how much influence, like, am I beating the game, or is the game just setting up artificial bear? I mean, it's a video game. That's
that's kind of the whole point.
Yeah.
So none of this is real, Doug. Just so you know, these are all artificial things.
Yeah, but it felt, I could feel that a lot more, because I was like, I'm really running out of ammo, and then I'm really not running out of ammo, but I am, but I'm not. And again,
I like it because it's that illusion of choice that you get in so many like narrative games nowadays.
Sure.
Where it's like, which totally choice are you going to make? And it's the same kind of concept here of this illusion of survival, when really like you can make it through anything with it. You can run past a lot of these things too. If you do run out. So I really like that. And again, I do think this is much more nerve-wracking than the original one. I think some of those corridors are so much darker, and they do so much with the lighting in this that some of those areas, because I remember going through Resident Evil 4 and just being like, okay, this is, it's survival horror, there's zombies, there's a couple like, oh no, but this had a couple scenes where I was like walking through different parts where you're kind of some of the underground parts, some of the parts where there's no power, where you're just like, okay, this very much has a sense of like, something's going to come out and fuck me up. Like, and I'm a little nervous as to where it's going to come from.
I did feel like, I remember Resident Evil 4, I felt like the original one was the turning point in which, horror games stop being scary, and this one, it's like, actually this one is pretty scary, because while the game gives you a lot of ammo, the thing I did like about it is that each individual enemy felt dangerous. While I didn't feel that in the original game. The original game was like, okay, pop, 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 and this one it's like they're much faster. So you kind of, especially when I like started playing it, it's like you have to run a lot, which I feel
Yep.
like you did not have to do so much. Well, you couldn't really in the original. You had to kind of plant your feet and start popping. But it was
Yep.
interesting, like how much I was like running away or running around the arena to like then stop, resettle, get my shot in, which I really did enjoy. And I, like you said, I think it's really funny. I was thinking about it as I was looking at this game with the graphics, and like it does a lot of really good stuff with lighting, where you're saying there's like dark areas, it's kind of spooky. I was like, as I was playing, I was like, this is as good as games ever need to look for me. Like, I'm good. Like, this is fine. This is the best I need them to be. Because there's a part where I was going through a cave. I was like, that is just a damn good looking cave. I don't know what 2 more generations of games is going to make this cave look any better than what it looks right now.
Yeah, but think about the load time you didn't have for that cave. Like, I mean, that's the thing, because you're right.
Yeah.
Like, we're at the point where I don't think anybody's sitting out here going like, "But look how amazing!" I mean, well, I guess people are, but
Yeah.
I think in my mind, I'm at the same point where it's like, nobody needs to talk to me about graphics. This looks just as good as Final Fantasy VII. Looks just as good as Spider-Man. Looks just as good as God of War. Looks just as good. They all look good now. Everything looks good. Everything looks good. I don't care how big it is.
There was some like really cool stuff that I felt like the graphics really added to certain scenes. Like especially, I really loved the castle areas. Like the castle areas just looked incredible. There's something I feel like I think Village also does this. And it's actually kind of the problem I had with both Village and Resident Evil 4. I really love those castle areas where like we're gonna do we're gonna do a short section that's very similar to Resident Evil 2, where you're kind of like in one facility and you're kind of going in and out of the one facility.
Yeah.
And it's like a small part of the game. It's like, why is this not the entire game? But I know that you weren't a huge fan.
I was gonna say we have very different takes on that, because I feel like this game, just because the environments are so varied, and again, I remember going back to the original, like there were not games that had these types of settings, like with this creepy old village, like, and you had so many different things that you're kind of exploring. And I think that's part of the draw of it, is you start out with this creepy rustic village, and from there you move into this giant elaborate castle. And then, not super huge spoilers. I mean, the game's 30 years old, 20 years old, whatever. But I mean, then you get into some of the more like modern looking settings towards the end, and all of these have their own unique features. They have their own unique look. They have their own unique feeling to them. And I think part of the draw of this is that you get so much variety. I mean, going across the giant lake is super cool, and just being able to feel like you're exploring this entire countryside, because you need a jet ski to get from there, a boat and a boat to get from side to side. And it's just, I don't know. There's something about exploring the wider area, because every area I stopped in, I wanted to kind of look around for a second and go, okay, this is kind of I know this is kind of the end of the village section, so let's just kind of poke around a little bit more here, because this is kind of cool to look at.
It's funny because I think the things you like about Resident Evil 4 are the things I don't like about Resident Evil 4. Because I think at the end of this, I prefer the Resident Evil 2 remake, because the Resident Evil 2 remake I felt like had more puzzles. I like that it was more like a single facility area where you're kind of like learning the area. So you're like, no, I liked Resident Evil 2 when I popped open my map. It's like, okay, left, right, left. And there's like none of that in this game. And then like with Resident Evil 2, like there's only a few enemies. I like that it was less actiony, and this one's more actiony, but it feels like you're like the complete opposite. Where you're like, I like Resident Evil 4 because it's more actiony, and because you're not stuck
less puzzly. You're not stuck in the same area.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and I think that's the thing with Resident Evil. I think there's so many people who 4 hit, and 4 I think is kind of revered by everyone.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of this weird middle ground. And I mean, I came in and like I played 2 on the original PlayStation. It was like, this is some nonsense. I don't like this. Where am I going? What's going on? I ain't got time for this. And also, a couple things in there scared the shit out of 9-year-old me. Yay, parents. But and then 4 comes along, and I think 4 is such this weird middle ground between the two. And then, I mean, I remember at the time, like looking back, they're rough. But I remember at the time, I was like, I don't know what everybody's issue was with 5 and 6. Like, they're not that bad.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed 5 and 6 and Revelations and those things. So I think there is kind of this like older Resident Evil fan, which I think you lean hard into, the like
Definitely,
1, 2,
for sure.
3.
Yeah.
And then there's kind of the post 4 more actiony side of it. And I think a lot of people kind of lean one way or the other. I tend to lean later Resident Evil. I think you tend to lean earlier.
Yeah.
And it is interesting because I think 7 and 8 are kind of looking at 4 as such inspiration and going like, okay, we can middle road this.
That was really funny. I was gonna say 7 and 8. I feel I feel like I like way more classical style. 7 especially. 7
especially. I think 8 starts.
8 is more like 4. It's a yeah.
I mean, that was the other thing I kind of felt like this. There were 1 or 2 spots because I played 8 twice in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
There are a couple spots where I was like, oh, isn't this an 8? Oh no, yep, this is 4. Okay, yep, this is 4. I thought that was an 8, but this is a...
Yeah, yeah. They're informing one another now, which is super weird.
I think it was a little weird for me just because, again, in the last like 3 or 4 years, I've played through 4, I played through
Yeah.
8 twice, and now playing this. They are so similar, and there's so much that each one's drawing from the other at this point
Yeah.
that it does start to blend a little bit in my head. And I think that led to me not quite being as like, "Ooh, this is amazing,"
Yeah.
as I would have been had I not just gone through and played Village, which has the castle, has the village, has the modern facility. I mean, the
Yeah.
story beats, the pattern is there in 8 that you get in 7 or in 4. So
Yeah. No, I was actually thinking about it, but like almost like beat for beat. Like besides the spooky house in
yeah,
Resident Evil 8, which I think is like the unique aspect, it's like actually this like shot for shot. It's like almost like a shot for shot remake of Resident Evil 4. Even the
yep,
final area is like the settings
very
are
similar.
very similar between each. And it was funny kind of thing I was saying before. It's like, okay, so Resident Evil 8 is based off the original Resident Evil 4, but the Resident Evil 4 remake is also based off a little bit off of 8. And so it's like really strange, kind of like strange bedfellows. But it is interesting. I think the next thing, I'm just ready for the big fight to happen with whatever Resident Evil 9 is. It's just like, okay, are you going to build from the stem of the remakes? Are you going to build from the stem of Resident Evil 7, 8, or what's going on? I don't know.
It does kind of
I'm
feel like we're coming to this
curious.
point where both aspects are kind of drawing to their conclusions. Because
Yeah,
like you really like, let's be honest, like I don't mind 5 and 6, but nobody's gonna be like, oh my god, Resident Evil 5 remake. Ah! So you're
yeah,
kind of out of remakes unless you do Code Veronica, which I think there's a bunch of people who'd be interested in that.
yeah.
And I think 7, 8 have pushed so far into where 4 is that you are kind of at this weird teetering point of like, okay, we've got 2 Resident Evil series going right
Yeah,
now.
exactly. Yeah.
What does 9 look like? Because at some point we're going to run out of remakes.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm like, I'm kind of curious if like this is a glimpse of the future of the series or not. I mean, I really did enjoy it though. I think
Oh,
I
yeah.
can't even really point to why I didn't enjoy it as much as RE2. I think it's maybe just the gameplay styles, but it was cool. I really liked how it looked. I liked the gameplay stuff was really fun. I think some of the boss battles look really nice. Although I do think the boss battles are probably one of the weaker aspects of this game. In that every boss battle, I'm like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? And not in the like,
Really?
what's the puzzle here? No, it just
You
felt like,
shoot him in the face and then you shoot the big monstery thing.
I
Done.
guess they all just felt like very, I like non spoiler. There's one that's not, that is a not just shoot them in the face. There's like 2 boss battles that aren't just to simply shoot them in the face. And I was just like, I don't get what you're trying to tell me, game. I'm just saying, I would say most of the game felt like impeccable. Like this is just a very well made game. And every time I got to a boss fight, I was like, this is feeling a little weird. But it could have just been a little weird in the original game. And that's just like a portion of
I,
that.
I think they are. And I think the other thing is the bosses are never that difficult. There's only one that I
Yeah.
kind of really got stuck on. I think the difficulty in this game comes more so from learning maps of like when you get into a village, when you get into a section of where are they going to come from, who's going to come from where. The couple parts that I struggled in, it was always like, oh, okay, up, and then the big giant dude's gonna come off. Oh, yep, and chainsaw guy comes from over here. Okay, and then they go
Yeah.
there, and there's 4 over here, and you kind of get that part is I think where the difficulty comes from because the bosses with one exception, I pretty much breezed through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I mean, it is a great game that
Yeah.
holds up on its own. And I think just the kind of newness feeling of it, I think just again, it just reiterates what an amazing game was here to start with.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a classic for a reason, and you can feel it as you play through it that hey, this game has such a good foundation, and really we're just putting some new clothes on it, making it look pretty, and here you go.
Yeah. Which is almost disappointing because it does kind of discount how good the game, like divorced from Resident Evil 4. I'd almost be more curious, like somebody who's never played Resident Evil 4, how do you feel about this game?
That's true.
Does it
I
feel
would be
old?
curious on that take.
Like, does it feel old to them, or does it feel like amazing brand new game? It's funny. I know we're trying to end this, but one of the other games that really reminded me of was Hi-Fi Rush. And the reason it reminded me of Hi-Fi Rush is because Hi-Fi Rush is an interesting look at like a very traditional game
Yeah.
done 20 years later. So it's interesting. It's like, oh, that's how far that genre's come. Like you actually see that jump if you're playing in the same sandbox. So it was kind of cool, like seeing like there is the one point like games haven't gone that far, but actually No, look, it's an interesting look at how far games have come. Like if you take a look at a screenshot of RE4 then and played a little bit of RE4 and then played this version, it's like, wow, just the animations have gotten better. This has gotten better. This has gotten better. Story stayed the same, but everything has gotten better.
The story's good too. I like the story. It's basic, it's simple, it's straightforward, and it's fun, and that's great.
Yeah, but it's an interesting piece to look at. I don't know
for sure.
I don't know, but no,
for sure. We are Workforce Gaming. We try to get new videos up every Monday. Please leave a comment, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you later.
Bye.